Be brave, don't be afraid of the US. There's plenty of money here for you.
Santi production. Welcome to Finding America. I'm on a 13,000-mile road trip to meet Finnish Americans and figure out why they want to be here and learn about cultural differences. You'll meet exciting Finns and hear about their journeys in America. And we're back in New York with breakfast. And look who made it all the way here. Pika, what up, dude? You made it to New York, boy. Good job. Good job, Oxo in the kitchen. Oh boy, there's the hard drive tower. It's all backed up now. Kind of. So. Today I think we go see Eric, maybe a museum, some food, some Soho House, some photos. I don't know. We'll see. Bye bye. We've just got back from Los Angeles as we did a quick flight to play in my team's football finals. We lost by penalty kicks after a tight overtime. More about that in the after movie that will focus more about my travels. We met up with a friend of mine, Eric Hercules, who is known for his levitation work and angle study series. He's a visionary and a good friend, so I was happy he took the time to take us out to take some photos. In this episode, we sit down with Jarno Vanto, who is a lawyer here in New York City. Jarno shares stories about his journey to America, and we discuss the cultural differences as well as what it's like to be a lawyer in America. Oh, before we get on with the show, it would mean the world to me, and it would help me creating content like this in the future if you could subscribe, smash the like button, and maybe share this with a friend. See you next time. So for someone who's never heard of you, how would you introduce yourself?
First, start with the name, Jarno Vanto. I'm a lawyer. I guess that's what I'm sort of known for. I've been in the US for 18 years total. I have never actually worked in Finland since I graduated from Finland. So I've spent my entire career out. In addition to the US, I spent time in Belgium about 3 years. All this time that I've been in the US, I've been in New York. Never really considered moving anywhere outside the city, but that may change.
Do you have any pet peeves in America? Something that really kind of bugs you?
I guess some of the frustrations come from things like Americans tend to always celebrate themselves as this kind of haven of the market. For example, particularly in New York City, the bureaucracy is overwhelming. So every time you have to interact with the bureaucracy, no matter what it is, if it's getting a license for something or filing a complaint or you name it, whenever you have to interact with the government, many places you have to go to and file papers and write checks and do all of those things that Finns really haven't had to do in Finland for a long time. What
makes you want to stay here? You don't really have a lot of complaints, and you've been here for, 18 years?
Yeah.
But are there specific reasons why you really want to stay in America? Because you could probably go, with your experience, anywhere in the world.
You know, when I initially came here, one of the things that I had these ambitions. I'm a lawyer, I come from a family of lawyers, my siblings are lawyers, everyone's a lawyer. I guess I just wanted to kind of show that if New York is a very competitive market for lawyers, there are a lot of lawyers. If I make it here and if I could make a decent living out of being a lawyer in the city, that I could, show myself that I'm a good lawyer and I can survive even in a very competitive environment.
The American way of how lawsuits and everything works is a bit weird. At least what I've heard, and you can correct me, is that in Silicon Valley it's a common problem where corporation gets sued all the time, and you have to return the suit, or you'll, I guess, lose by default, and it's expensive. So you could run people to the ground with lawsuits. So what's that all about?
One of the things that's a huge difference between, say, Finland and the United States is that Finland has a rule called the loser pays. What that means is that if you sue someone, or if you get sued for that matter, and you lose the case, you have to pay the other party's attorney's fees. Here in the US, you don't have to pay the other party's attorney's fees, which, of course, the Finnish rule is tended to discourage filing lawsuits. Here, since you don't have the risk of actually having to pay the other party's lawyer's fees, you don't run that risk, so that kind of encourages people to file more lawsuits. What I see as a disadvantage in the kind of the Finnish and more European approach to these lawsuits is that, let's say that an elderly person who's filing a lawsuit against a large hospital, something that happened to you in that hospital. And then the hospital has the funds to hire an army of lawyers. You may have the funds to hire maybe one lawyer and not a really good one. Given that huge disadvantage that you have in that position and you potentially have to pay the legal fees of that large hospital, I don't think that it's serving the purpose that it was intended. I see advantages in both approaches.
So what do you do on your free time? You come from Finland, so you probably have a pretty strong belief in work-life balance.
I don't work Saturdays, I do work Sundays. I bicycle a lot, 2,000 miles a year. I've started doing more of that during the pandemic, obviously, because I wasn't going to the office. One of the things about biking in New York City that there's this perception is very dangerous, and it still is, but it's a lot less dangerous than it was just a few years ago, because they have built all these bike paths around the city, and the new mayor who was just elected promised that there would be even more. For example, when I now go to the office, and I've been going like twice a week, I tend to bike in, and it's a 50-minute bike ride one way, and I can bike all the way from where I live in Brooklyn to the office using a bike path. I don't actually have to cross a highway once.
How do you define success?
That others recognize you're good, which probably is measured by in terms of promotions and financial compensation, but then not having to pay too high a personal price for it. So in other words, if your success comes with, divorces, addictions, various other things, your career might look good, but then I'm not sure if it's really worth everything else. So it has to be a balance. And at some point you have to realize that if you can't draw that balance, then maybe not worth pursuing.
Do you consider yourself lucky?
Yeah, there's always some luck involved, right? There's that old saying that no one's gonna come and get you from your home, or that what Woody Allen said that, 99% of success is about showing up. It is really, a lot of it is about that. So you get the opportunities by engaging with others and going out there.
So what are your thoughts on failure? How do you define failure?
You can fail yourself and fail others, right? Failing yourself is, I guess, not accomplishing the things that you kind of set out to accomplish. I remember I had, during the banking crisis, challenges about figuring out what to, but that was like 13 years ago already. But still, I remember I had challenges around what it is that I wanted to do, and I figured that I'm going to focus on working with tech startups. And that choice was the right one. Again, the earlier question, whether there's any luck involved. I guess there was some luck involved because particularly in Finland and Sweden, the whole banking crisis and what happened with Nokia created all these startups, and they had a lot of needs in the US. I was able to kind of tap into that vein. I guess a true failure is that if you fail, you don't learn anything about the failure. And particularly if you kind of don't stand up and pull yourself up from the bootstraps and do something about it. Yeah. If you kind of freeze like a deer in the headlights and just don't do anything about it, I think that's probably the definition of failure for me. And this applies to both personal and work, that you just gotta be creative, because there's never gonna be a time when everything that surrounds you is just gonna be agreeable with you.
How important for success do you see coaching and mentorships?
Hugely important, particularly now when everything's kind of moved online. It's critical for younger people starting their careers, and I'm just talking about the law, I'm talking about more generally. Like when you can engage with, people who've been in your field, whatever that is, for a long time and have perspectives, not only things like what you should do, but what you shouldn't do. And in order to get from A to B, what it is that you should accomplish, those are really valuable insights, because oftentimes when you're starting your career and you're, whether you're considering move to the United States or whatever your grand dream is, that if you can reflect with someone who has that experience, it's so valuable. Oftentimes, more senior people in their careers, they think they don't have the time. They're so busy because it gives back to them too.
Yeah, it's a two-way street, right?
Right, it is. And so when you engage with junior persons just starting their career and you give them tips and they're like, oh my God, they value that so much, and it's really important for them, and they wouldn't know these things without you, and you get that energy back 1,000-fold, I think.
What makes Finnish people unique, if anything?
I guess given the history, we're not afraid of challenges, and we're in some ways also innocent, but in a good way, meaning that we don't take a cynical approach to things immediately, which can actually get us past some of the issues that, for example, others may see as problems. That's a good thing. particularly with Finns who have traveled a lot. And that's a huge resource, I feel, that is not being utilized in Finland to the degree it should. That they are really open, because I always hate, when you start answering these types of questions, you kind of go to cliche immediately. Yeah, and then like words like Sisu start coming out the first second. But there are many other countries where people have as much Sisu as Finns, I think. It's just reflected in different ways. And then honesty. Mm-hmm. It's a hugely important thing, particularly in business, that you can trust, or for example, Americans can trust that Finns pay their bills and generally comply with their agreements that they make. And for example, they don't sue immediately if things go wrong. And I guess where the Sisu part comes out, if there's adversity, that they don't fold immediately, they attack. Yep. Which is a good thing. So those are some of the good things, somewhat unique to Finns. Stories like Volt here, a really good example of individuals who founded the company came from a kind of a new breed of Finns who are not hesitant to state that they're the greatest company in the world and this what they're doing and blah blah blah, and kind of shameless promotion, and that's what's needed. Americans are particularly good at making whatever they say, because for example, I just noticed with my own kids, for example, that they start training on public speaking when the first words come out of their mouth. They're giving presentations at 2 years old. When a Finn comes along, and let's say that there's a lineup of speakers at a conference when you're talking about, I don't know, software development or something, sure. And the American loud brash, we're the best and we have created this software that's fantastic and blah, 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 and it collects all the data, blah, 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 and it really does this thing better than anyone. And then a Finn comes out, we've created this software, it has these components to the software, focusing on technicality, but without forgetting that this is all about selling eventually. It's not about the technical virtue.
What does it mean to be Finnish to you?
One interesting thing I have to say, because obviously Finland is a very small country. Yeah. You kind of start realizing that the word Finland has no meaning to an average American. Spending any amount of energy into thinking, what did they think of me because I'm from Finland? They won't probably think of anything. It's just a fellow with a strange name. How do you pronounce your name? It's probably when they know something about Finland, it's always, it's literally never been anything negative. Yeah. It's always good things. Oh, you guys had the Nokia or something like that's already kind of forgotten gradually, but still any number of things that they remember, and it's always associated with technology. It's always associated with ice hockey for people who know ice hockey, or people have good associations with Finland and Finnish people, and when they hear that I'm from Finland, and those who know Finland always associated with something good.
You mentioned you got kids, and so how do you keep Finnish traditions and culture going on in your family, because they are growing up in America?
Yeah, part of it is obviously going to Finland, trying to bring them in at least once a year for a longer stretch. And for example, I always noticed that, particularly with my older son, that during the school year, because they all speak Finnish, during the school year the Finnish gets worse, but then in the summer after they spend a week with the Finnish kids, their Finnish is fine again. The key thing is they must be able to connect the fact that they're Finnish to something concrete, so they need to go there physically. And if it's just something that they watch on TV or they don't have a real connection with, then it's quickly forgotten, because the society is so good at molding everyone into Americans. Every time when they say something in English, trying to say that in Finnish. I should be more diligent about it.
Finland pops up oddly a lot in popular culture. What's your favorite examples of this, or funny stories where Finland popped up in a random way?
We had this big corporate event, 600 plus people. The DJ, this was in Washington, D.C., right? The DJ had heard, and I never actually then interacted later, although I had a plan to go say hi to him. How is this possible? And so, but the DJ had presumably heard that there was a Finn in the room. He was a big Monty Python fan. And he started, for a 5-second period, he played the Finland, Finland, Finland. And I thought I was the only Finn in the room, but it later turned out that everyone came to say hi and say, oh, so was the guy played it for you? I was like, yeah, of course he played it for me.
Do you have an American dream?
It's probably changed over the years. I wanted to achieve professional success initially, and then I kind of achieved it in some ways. Then it became like, okay, so now I have to live in this apartment in Midtown Manhattan or something like that. So stupid material things, right? Now it's more, okay, I want to live in a place where I can work and work out, be out in the nature and things like that. It's just, you age, your kind of American dream changes. I have kids. I think my dream is that to the extent that they want it, because they have the choice, right? So they can, because they're dual nationals, so they can move to Finland or stay in the US.
Yep.
That they become successful in whatever they decide to do. And I'm not pushing them in any, my wife isn't doing that either. They're not pushing them in any specific direction.
Yeah.
But I hope that whatever direction they take, that there's some aspect of Finnishness to it.
Did you have any hardships converting into being an American? Like, how do you order coffee at Starbucks? Do you have issues with that?
My Starbucks name is Jay.
I love that.
Well, I think I'm still thinking in metric and centigrade. Yeah, I still haven't changed them. I still think of temperature in Celsius, and I still think of distances in centimeters and meters.
It gives me some courage because I'm just gonna not convert to this ridiculous. It's my protest.
Right. And I still like for example, on my iPhone, I still have it all in metric, and obviously I understand like 100 miles means, but for me, I still instead of thinking 100 miles, it's 160 kilometers.
How do you define success within your corporation? Since you are a partner in the company,
Our firm, for example, encourages sharing of work. We don't jealously guard our clients, and we share work, everyone cooperates, and then cooperation is encouraged through the compensation system that rewards cooperation. I think that's a good thing. It leads to a healthier work environment as opposed to some what they call eat what you kill model. And our firm actually has offices in Europe too. So like next week when I go to Finland, I'm also going to the Brussels office. There's international work, and I feel that for me it's always important to have that international aspect in my work. Americans measure it by compensation. So the more you make the...
Since you're a partner, would you also consider yourself as an entrepreneur?
I would say in any industry any longer can rely on steady flow of work from some clients that have been around for decades. So we're being constantly reassessed, assessed, audited, analyzed all the time. How you can sort of survive in that environment is that you have to look at new clients and new fields and be creative in kinds of services that you provide. For example, as lawyers, thinking that we're just built by the hour and that's how we make our money is basically out the door. We have all these different types of pricing models and service offerings, and that has been a huge change. No one is sitting wearing a suit and tie and expecting the work to just flow in. Everyone has to go out there and kind of, I like developing business, I like developing new relationships, and that entrepreneurial aspect of the work is really important for me.
So that being said, what are some concrete steps as an entrepreneur should do in the next 5 years to be in your position?
It depends on what the expectations around your business are. So for example, if you're in an industry that can scale, so for example, lawyers are difficult to scale because we're humans and we can only work 24/7. This classic dilemma, right? We're limited.
Until we get to cloning.
Right, if you can create something that can scale, investors love things that can scale and things that are not dependent on individual humans. Lawyers and other consultants are always going to be needed, and some of them will be paid handsomely depending on what their focus areas and what their skill sets are, but we're not scalable. If you build something that can scale, things that can be copied endlessly without additional cost, that should get you far. And I think, for example, Finland is often focused on things that wood products, things that, grow out, and things that large machines that can be built. For example, the Volt deal was a good example that Finland can also build really good success stories in the consumer space. And I guess, people are already starting to talk about the second Nokia, but maybe it's the second coming of Nokia succeeding so well with the consumer handsets. Then they later sold that business to Americans. And here again, there was another consumer business that was sold to Americans. What I think Finland will need in the near term is to have sufficient capital to build these businesses so that they don't have to be sold to Americans.
It gets lonely and dark at times when you work a lot of hours. So do you have a concrete kind of mindset or tip that helps you survive those moments in life?
Find a way where you can do something that will so completely distract you from these day-to-day issues. Those are not going to go away. I like cycling, for example, because I can't focus on anything else but the riding, particularly in New York City, because you have to pay attention to things around you all the time if you want to get home alive. Stand-up comedy is another. If I want to distract myself completely, I want to go watch stand-up comedy or listen to audiobooks or something, but find yourself a way of distracting yourself from those day-to-day issues, because you need to restore the energy. No one can work, 24/7. I'm not a big fan of measuring myself. I don't have an Oura ring. I don't want to know how badly I sleep. That's how I'm thinking about it. We can't just all be serious the whole time and just pursue all these goals relentlessly. That's, to me, is not sustainable. And so it's a combination of working hard, distracting yourself every once in a while, and doing something that takes your focus completely so you don't have to think of other things.
All right, we're gonna do word association. So I'll give you 10 different words and just let me know what you think about them, okay?
Okay.
Word number 1, blue.
White.
White.
Blue.
Sauna.
Love.
Sisu.
Uncertain.
Black.
November sky in Helsinki.
Green.
Birch trees in the summer.
Coca-Cola.
0.
The Matrix.
First one is the best.
Finland.
Second home.
Love.
Home.
And what do you have to say to the next generation of entrepreneurs?
Be brave. Don't be afraid of the US. There's plenty of money here for you.